Welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Silverette. Silverettes are for helping to heal your sore nipples. And today's episode is also brought to you by Imani and breastpumps.com. Imani recently released the Imani i1 Dual Breast Pump. And we will hear more from our sponsors later, but you can head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and check our sponsor page if you need anything. See if you can give them any of your business because they make this podcast possible. And while you're there, scroll down and enter your email address, and we will send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And don't leave without checking out our shop page where you can see all of our awesome shirts and drinkware and stickers and fun things like that with our new logo and some fun sayings on it. And now Dianne has our review of the week.
And it comes from our iTunes. So thank you so much for putting this on iTunes for us. And she says that she said, I sent them a long email explaining how they helped me break an endless cycle of clogged ducts that turned into mastitis. I'm so thankful I found them and will continue to listen. And this must have been our mastitis episode, I'm guessing. That she, listened to and kind of helped solve her problem. And I'll link that in the show notes in case you haven't listened to it. But I am really glad that helped you because that's miserable to have this endless cycle of clogged ducts and all that stuff. So thank you so much for letting us know how that was helpful and for putting that on iTunes for us. We super appreciate it. You can also send us an email if you do not have a way to put it on iTunes, or you can, send us an Instagram. Last time I read one that had come from my Instagram, and Abby gets them all the time too on her Instagram. So you can absolutely, reach out any way you want to reach out and let us know how we've helped you if you want to do that. And I wanted to also, just super quick, mention my colleague's book. This book sucks. Feeding Your Baby Shouldn't. You can find it on Amazon. It's adorable and really great, especially if you're a first-time parent or, anywhere if you're like a lactation consultant or a breastfeeding support person and you want to check it out just so that you have something to refer other parents to, because I know people ask me all the time, what's a good book? What's a good book? And honestly, there's a lot of books out there that are crap. So this one is really good. So you can find it on Amazon if you want to. This book sucks, but Feeding Your Baby Shouldn't. And we are going to talk about
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer. You're just
no.
So we were just talking about this. Oh my God.
Week. We do this every week. We're talking. We talk for 10 minutes, and then it somehow magically is related to what we're talking about in the episode. And then we're like, oh man, we should have hit record earlier. It's so frustrating, but we were going on. I don't even know how we got on this. Oh, we're talking about.
I was just saying that. I was just thinking that. I'm like, why did I even ask you if you'd watched Dahmer? I don't even remember why I asked you that.
I don't know. We were talking about dead bodies and we were talking about the smell and then for some reason the Dahmer thing came up and show, and I was like, I can't watch it. And then we were talking about Jeffrey Dahmer, and she was like, how do people get like that? And then I made the joke well, they weren't breastfed. And then, we were like, but wait, breastfeeding is nurturing. And of course, just because you don't breastfeed doesn't mean you're going to make a serial killer. But people that are neglected and emotionally abused or mostly neglected. I mean, emotional neglect, actually not responding to needs, ever, not being emotionally attached or anything to your child is actually proven to be far worse than even emotional abuse, because at least there's with abuse, there's either attention, neglect, just we're really jumping right in here. But as a social worker and somebody who worked with really severely abused and neglected children in the social welfare system, people do take and people who are very, very mentally ill or substance abuse, or, not just, it's not just anybody does this, but people will, I had clients who were just, they had the baby and they would just put the baby in the closet.
Yeah.
And then the baby just was just in the closet. And like this type of neglect is like, baby, you with no interaction from other, people or caregivers, like you like literally don't develop, and you don't develop, your conscience. And, this is how people become like sociopathic, like with absolutely zero empathy, with absolutely zero, sense of, empathy or anything for other people.
Right.
And of course, when we're not, obviously we're talking about the extreme situation, but this is like, it was completely relating, it was like relating to what we were going to talk about today, which is about how people think that breastfeeding makes kids needy. And it's like completely insane to think that oh my God, I have so much to say.
I know.
I used to do this training. I would train people at my job about like, so we use this thing called PROACT. It's professional assault crisis training. And it was just basically the hands-on restraint method that we would use when children were becoming violent. And the training would always start with like, intervening without your hands, as much as possible. And so we would start the training off with like, why do you think children, act out? Why do you think that people become, violent or aggressive or whatever? And the number one answer is always like, they want attention. And it's so frustrating to think that as a social worker and in this like field, that people that think about other people as acting out just because they want attention, and not understanding, first of all, that attention, that everybody wants attention. Everybody needs attention. And it's seen as so like, oh, they're so needy. They just need attention. Yeah, they do. They need attention. Everybody needs attention and emotional connection. And if you are not providing it, they damn well act out.
Yeah.
Like this is just how it works.
There's when my husband and I got together, and Abby and I in a few weeks are going to do an episode about like kind of reintroducing ourselves, I guess, because I feel like we talk on the podcast every week like you guys have been with us for our whole lives. So we do get that maybe you don't know like some of our history. So like kind of in a nutshell, Abby was a social worker who worked with troubled kids, and she just, kind of put that out there a little bit for you. But my husband is not the father of my children. He is my second round, which...
Did you call him your second round?
Yeah. He is my second husband and my last. He will definitely be my last. But so when we got together, I was just starting to I was literally studying for the IBCLC exam when we got together. And I remember like we were starting to date, and I remember sending him like the blueprint of how to become an IBCLC. And I was like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm studying for. And he was like, that looks kind of hard, but and I remember him like bringing me coffee when I was up late at night studying and stuff, because I had these little kids. So I would study at night. So everything like, we would talk about different stuff, and I'd be like, yeah, but, like too bad they weren't breastfed, or, I always kind of like threw that in there somewhere along the way. And at one point I did say, we were talking about like, just how bad like crime is and, things like that. And I was like, yeah, they're not breastfed. That's why. And he was like, why is that your answer for everything? And I'm like, you are not going to see your breastfed child, your kid that you breastfed for a year, that you like were responding to their needs for a year, feeding them and nurturing them and holding them and snuggling with them. Like, you're not going to see that child on the corner selling drugs. Like, maybe you will, but overall, probably not. And why is that? Because they were likely neglected and looking for their family elsewhere, because they're not getting it in home. Right? They're not getting the attention and the support and what they need from the people that are in their home. They are going elsewhere to find that. And that's where you get the gangs, and that's where you get stuff like that, because they are looking for that connection somewhere else. And I did an infant mental health training. It was actually right when the pandemic was starting. It was fascinating. And it was just, oh my God, it was so fast. We'll have to maybe do an episode or something on that sometime because I still have all my notes and all my stuff from that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we watched this video of a parent who like was and they was like intentionally done this way so they could see the baby's reaction. And the baby was probably, I don't know, 3, 4 months, 5 months, something like that, 6 months, right in there. And the mom was like, playing with the baby and the baby's giggling and all that stuff. And all of a sudden she went totally like stone faced and stopped interacting with the baby, like just completely stopped interacting with the baby. And the baby was like, seriously, the reaction of this baby was like heartbreaking. Like she was trying to draw her mother in and trying to get her some kind of reaction out of her mother, and like squawking and calling out, and the mother just was not reacting at all, and until the baby finally just started crying like, oh my God. It was heartbreaking. I'll have to see if I can find it and I'll link it. But it was like, this is how true, like they know. And for people to think like, oh, it's just a baby. Yeah. They know, and they want to connect with you. You're their parent. You're their whole world. And if they're not, it's not them trying to be needy. It is just, and as much as like, we get it, because some days it's just like, oh my God, I cannot do one more thing for one more person. And then your baby hits that stage where they are like, what do they call it? Like the stranger danger phase.
Anxiety, separation anxiety.
Like separation anxiety. They hit that where if the minute you walk out of the room, they freak out and you're like, what the fuck? I just need to fucking pee. Right. Like, but your baby is like screaming, and it's like, this is seriously traumatic for them. They need you. And I don't know how anybody can be like, oh, they're just needy. They're just needy. They have to figure it out on their own.
Well, first of all, this word needy, I can't stand this word needy. The word needy comes from the word need, right? We're talking about a need. Your baby isn't needy. They have needs. This is normal. Babies have needs. Like needy is this, like we expect babies to act like adults. Which, by the way, adults have needs too, but we just like, we all have like repressed all of our needs enough that we can function in this society that like offers very little emotional connection. But like your baby doesn't know all that, and your baby has needs. And if you don't respond to those needs, then there will be consequences. Your baby has you when they have, you need to be responding to them, or they will, they will not develop the that sense of healthy attachment to another person. They will not develop this sense of self-worth, this sense of safety. And all you need to do is watch the news or look out your window and see the consequences of this. Now, I want to talk about something that you talked about is like, sometimes you have days where you just can't respond and you feel like overwhelmed. That is fine. We're not talking about, I just can't handle it, so I locked myself in the bathroom and the baby's on there, toddler's on the other side banging on the door crying. That your toddler's fine. Your toddler is fine while you take a break. Like your baby, if you feel like your baby's crying all the time and you put them in the crib or wherever, somewhere safe, so you walk out so that you don't shake them or something. That's not what we're talking about. We are talking about consistent and persistent ignoring of their needs, which I will say right now, no one listening to this podcast is doing. So that's not really the point of the podcast, is trying to get you to respond to your baby, because we know that you all are. Okay. This is what I was thinking about because I thought about this idea for this episode because of Jack, and Jack is 11, and I just want to tell the story of Jack because it's just, I always liked hearing from people that had older kids, because I was like, okay, so if I keep doing this, it'll work out, like you can see like the fruits of your effort. And so from the beginning, Jack was a very, what people love to call, needy, highly sensitive, didn't like to be put down, was very sensory, like a lot of sensory overload, loud noises, loud bright lights, and all of this, was very triggering for him, and he liked to be held and I breastfed Jack until he was 6.5 years old. So to this society that we live in, Jack should be like a complete mess, right? Because he was breastfed for so long. He's so needy. He's so, he's so wimpy and weak and, can't live without me. And, all of these things that we say, so messed up. All these things we say about kids that are breastfed for a long time, right? But Jack, and we went all in. We responded to all of his needs. Of course, I had bad days. Of course, I lost my shit. I threw things. I yelled. I did all this, all of these things. Like, I'm a normal person. But we really, this is where we found attachment parenting. It felt really good to us. We were really, he slept in our bed until he was like 8. I nursed him until he was 6.5. And, he, very, most of the time, very kind of timid, kind of shy, didn't want to, doesn't want to start conversations with people, needs to be, once he gets to his group of friends, needs to kind of be invited in order to get up, not the kid who just runs into the mix of it. And this year, so he's got this little best buddy here in Chicago, and his best buddy is going to start this program on Fridays. It's like a supplemental homeschool thing. It's like school, but for homeschoolers, run by homeschool people with homeschool kids. So yeah, it's every Friday, and it's like just like a place where they can go, and it's not school, but it's kind of school. And his friend is going to do this. And so I said, your friend's doing it. And the friend is just a completely different personality. Like, he's the guy who's running to the middle of the crowd. He's just like, real comfortable, real social. And so it's kind of perfect because Jack just kind of follows on his ankles, and, he gets to like benefit. Right. And so I was like, he's doing this program, do you want to do it? And he was like, kind of, and I was kind of joking because I knew that was not a thing that Jack's going to do. Jack's not going to go somewhere for a whole day without me. It's just not going to happen. Like people send their kids on sleepovers. People send their kids to school all day. Like, Jack does not leave my side. And that's fine. We set up our life like that, right? We homeschool. I stay home. I work on, during the night and on the weekends. And, we just set it up like this, and that's fine. And he seems a little bit weird to other people, but I don't care. And so he says, I think I do want to try that program. I'm stunned out of my mind, completely stunned out of my mind. Okay. He's like, he's, my friend's doing it, right? He's doing it, right? I'm like, yeah, he's going to do it. And the friend's kind of like, they're kind of like, yeah, we'll just be together. They're going to be in the same class. They're the same age. They're all of that. He goes the first day, he spends 8 hours at this place. He comes out, he's like, that's the greatest thing I've ever done.
Oh,
this is amazing. 2 weeks later, they get COVID. So he can't go on this Friday, right? I said, Jack, he's not going to be there. So, and I'm kind of like, you could totally stay home. Like, it's fine. You don't have to go. And he's like, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. I'm like, you're going to go without your friend? Like, I didn't say that. Like, I didn't say it just like that. But in my mind, I'm like, what? And I'm like, okay, well, he's not going to be there. Of course, all your, there'll be other people in the class and, whatever. I'm just trying to be like real neutral about it, And he's like, yeah, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. He goes without his friend to this thing. And I don't know, maybe people listening to me right now think that I'm an idiot and that this is no big news. But I got to tell you, this is big, big fucking news. It is huge. And I truly believe that somebody so highly sensitive and so, just sensitive and shy and all of that is able to do this and is demonstrating some, independence, if that's what you want to call it, some confidence. Certainly, you have to be confident in yourself to step away from the things that are normally comfortable for you. Right. And I truly believe that this is happening because of how we parented him.
Yeah.
And maybe that's like, maybe I'm thinking too highly of myself, but I'm very prepared to say all of my faults. Like, I'm not perfect at all. But I really believe that, like, he is developing this sense of himself, and he's confident moving in the world, and he's, he's pushing the envelope of his comfort zone because he had his needs met.
Mm-hmm.
I just really believe that.
Oh yeah, I absolutely believe that too. And I know I've told people, I'll say this real quick before we like do our break, but when my first son went to kindergarten, I brought him on his first day, and a lot of times people say, oh, we cried, and, like all this stuff about, he didn't want to go, and it was such a hard separation, and blah, blah, blah. We got there, and he goes, I still remember this very clearly. He goes, where's my backpack? I'm out of here. Like, that's what he said to me on his first day of kindergarten. And then I picked him up after it was over, and he goes, I'm smarter than all those people. I'm not going back there.
Oh,
I mean, he still acts like that. But I go, how are you going to learn anything? And he goes, I'll teach myself anything I need to know. This is a freaking 5-year-old, right? Yeah. Like, but this is because like he was, and I honestly like felt the same way. I really felt like it was because of the constant nurturing and togetherness we had when he was, growing up from, birth to, till he went to school. It was, constant nurturing, constant togetherness, constant, responsiveness. And I really feel like he was confident and he knew I wasn't going anywhere. And he was comfortable with that. And I think it makes a huge difference. And when people say, oh, you're going to turn him into a baby, he's going to be a baby the rest of his life. You stop letting him do that. Let him figure it out for himself. Let him do, and it's like, no, if that doesn't feel right for you, it's not right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with keeping your baby close and making sure that they feel nurtured. It has nothing wrong with them. It's not them being needy. It's them being
babies. That's normal.
Normal.
Okay. We have so much more to say. We'll be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Imani and breastpumps.com. Helping parents everywhere with the right tools, Imani recently released the Imani i1 Dual Breast Pump, featuring the quietest motor on the market. Experience optimal pumping with hospital-strength output, as well as a never-before-seen boost mode. Whether pumping from one breast or both, this smart system maintains a constant pumping pressure. Its 2 main cycles, massage and express, include multiple vacuums on each cycle. Portable, efficient, and hands-free. Find out why Imani USA products are trusted by over 46 million parents around the world throughout their breastfeeding journey. For more information, visit Imani USA, that's IMANIUSA.com, and use code BADASS for 25% off of your purchase. Or you can visit breastpumps.com/Imani, and you can place an order using your insurance benefits. Today's episode is also brought to you by Silverette. Have you ever struggled with sore or cracked nipples while nursing your baby? Silverette Silver Nursing Cups are your one-stop solution to soothe and protect your nursing nipples. Since silver is a naturally antimicrobial and antifungal metal, it can help ward off bacteria and infections before they appear. Silver, a naturally antimicrobial, antifungal, and antibacterial metal, contains potent anti-inflammatory properties that can be used to heal and prevent cuts, cracks, soreness, wounds, and infections. Silverette are the original and authentic silver nursing cups, both clinically tested and registered with the FDA. Because your nipples deserve the best. Join us on Mission Happy Nipples. Use code BADASS for 15% off of your order at silveretteusa.com. That's SILVERETTEUSA.com. Code BADASS for 15% off. And these sponsors and their promo codes can be found in our show notes under this episode at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. Our show notes will also include further information about things we talk about in this episode. And also at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, you'll find our breastfeeding resources, all of our other episodes, and information about scheduling your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne.
All right, go.
Yeah, so I feel the need to say that, like, you can do all the things right, and you can, breastfeed for 1,000,000 years and do all these things, and you still might have a kid who is afraid to go to their first day of school. You might have a kid who, is still, just very shy or, whatever. Like people have their different personalities. I think the point of what we're saying is that when you meet the needs of a baby and you understand that babies and children are not needy, they're not needy. They have needs and they are normal babies that then you have to respond to those needs. This is how people and brains are developed, and emotions and your sense of self and your sense of empathy for others. And this is how this stuff is developed, by having your needs met, which means when you're crying, you pick them up. Means, when they need to be fed, you feed them. And, there's also plenty of very well attached people who weren't breastfed. They had their needs met. Their cries were responded to. They had a lot of closeness with their parents. They had, they had their needs met. I just love breastfeeding because I feel like it's a cheat code. Like it's so, like happy, breastfeed, sad, breastfeed, mad, breastfeed, fell down, breastfeed, sleeping, breastfeed, like it's just so much, it's so easy, to have that connection. You can even do it. You could do it in your sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And to, and there's also people who do breastfeed and can also do, plenty of emotional harm, to their children too. So there's no, this isn't like a black and white situation. There's obviously more that goes into all of this than just, I breastfed Jack for 6.5 years. Therefore, he's a lovely, perfect human being. That's not the point. The point is that babies are not needy. This is normal behavior. And when you feed into and fuel and feed into those needs. And when you feed into that later on, it feels like such hard work because you're meeting these needs, and it goes on and on and on for years and years and years, right? It's not like, oh, I'm just gonna, do this for a year and then they're going to be super independent and they're going to be able to do all these things on their own and they're not going to be so needy and they're not going to need me all the time. It's not going to work like that. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take years, to see them grow and to have that develop inside of them. It takes a long time. And when I see Jack doing these things that I just, he was so as a young kid, he was so, he was overwhelmed by playgrounds. He didn't really even like to, play in big groups. And, that's a personality thing too. But to see him really pushing the envelope and having the confidence and that security to move into situations that maybe aren't that comfortable, that because he wants to do them, I think that comes from somebody who had their emotional needs met. And that's just it.
So why do we think then, and there might not be an answer to this question, but why do we think that people think that we shouldn't be catering to babies? Like, I don't understand, why are individuals like that? Why do people think, oh, you have to leave them to figure it out. You have to let them do their own thing. You have to let them, soothe themselves, figure out how to self-soothe, figure out how to take care of themselves at the age of like 3 and 4 months. Like, why does this happen?
Yeah. I mean, I remember when we had that episode with Rebecca Meeky and she was talking about the start of the kind of separation in like the 1800s where people thought you had to like keep your distance from babies because of germs, and how they were going to learn, independence by being treated like, by just being given independence, even at 3 months old, and they need to learn to self-soothe. This is going to be a lifelong lesson for them. If they learn to self-soothe now, they're going to, they'll be able to self-soothe later. And it's a complete misunderstanding, I think, of child development. We don't understand child development. We don't understand baby behavior, sure, but we don't understand child development at all. We don't understand that, we are animals, we are mammals, and we, our offspring, our young need to be taken care of just like any other, animal would be caring for their young. And, we don't understand, and then we can bring in all the other stuff, which is, kind of normalizing formula and how that is just like how, the profit world pushes those kinds of norms. And we see breastfeeding as as, being given all of these attributes that are just not true, because people profit from those relationships being ruined or not started at all. If you breastfeed, people can't make money off of breastfeeding. So we'll make money off of formula, and we'll say that breastfeeding makes them needy, and breastfeeding is for the third world, and breastfeeding is for, these kinds of things. And it's amazing how these things can affect cultural norms, right? And our culture, based on all of these things that I'm sure just touched the surface on, leads us to think that babies, if we want adults to be a certain way, then we need to start treating them like that as babies. But that's actually, it's like the complete opposite. It is the complete opposite. If you feed into those needs early, you will see this confidence and self-assuredness later on, not vice versa. If you're trying to create distance and trying to create independence as a baby, you're creating a situation of like emotional neglect, where if a baby's needs are not being met, they're constantly being left to cry alone, not a couple of times because you're overwhelmed, consistently and over again being left to cry because we think we're teaching them how to self-soothe. You're just teaching them that nobody's coming. Mm-hmm. You're teaching them that their needs are not important. You're teaching them that their needs are not going to be met, and they withdraw, they fall asleep, they do these things. And we see this later on as people who have no empathy, who have no ability to connect emotionally, with attachment issues. And that, not the opposite. You don't find independent people. And independence is a word that really irritates me, because I don't think it's really a thing. Nobody is truly independent. We are interdependent.
Right.
We all depend on each other.
That doesn't mean codependent. It means
exactly.
Yeah.
And you create codependency when people don't have their needs met. Right. Not when they do have their needs met.
And it's so wild, because when you think about relationships, like a marriage or a partnership where you are building a life together, the basis of that is depending on each other and counting on each other, and, kind of growing that and embracing that. So why would we want anything different for our baby? Like, why would we have a baby and not create that same relationship with them, not create that same, dependency where we can kind of like count on each other, where your baby knows that they can count on you. They know you're going to be there. Like, why would we not want that for them? I don't understand why. Like, it's just mind boggling to me why people are like, well, they're not going to be independent if you continue to breastfeed them. They're not going to be independent if you're constantly doing for them. It's like, but then why do we do that for our partners?
Right.
Right. What?
Well, and I do hear people say sometimes, like, oh, if I'm crying, I just want to be left alone, or I don't want to be touched, or, I don't want anybody to see me, whatever. These are all trauma responses to not having your needs met, by the way.
Right.
This is not, people say it like it's normal, and, that's, how you're supposed to be. And, but no, these are responses to not having those needs met. Much of what we see in the world is a response to not having your needs met. I mean, have you ever been in a relationship with a person who was just emotionally completely incapable of being there emotionally?
Yeah. And then how'd that go?
Well, exactly.
Divorce. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true.
And this all comes from, and we think, like, oh, you're making too much of the baby stage. And I think, no, we are not making too much of it. This is literally how people become healthy adults, by having their needs met as babies and children. And I'm not, it's just is. Mm-hmm. We understand this. We know this as, as people who, study child development, as people who understand anthropology, how, early humans acted, throughout history. People have been breastfed, they've slept together, not isolated. They have been worn. Baby wearing is an old practice. And had their needs met. Humans have not, at no point in history have humans until recently, been just left to cry and just be alone.
I remember my sister telling me one time, I don't even know if I had kids at this point or not, but I remember her telling me, and she's my oldest sister, so she was the first one. I remember her saying, I remember when I was little and having a nightmare and just laying in my bed, terrified, but I knew that I couldn't go in to get mom because it wasn't something we did. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't something we did.
Yep.
And we knew that. We knew, like, there wasn't that nurturing, like growing up, like it was kind of like a business transaction, like, our upbringing. And she said, I don't ever want my kids to feel like that. I don't ever want them to feel like they can't come to me.
Yeah.
From the age of whatever it is. And that's kind of how I always felt too. It's like, and I remember like complaining. And again, this goes with like, you can complain about how needy your kids are. That's fine because we all get it. Like, we all understand it. But I made the mistake of complaining to my mother once about how my kid always comes in the middle of the night and gets in bed with me. And I was a single mom. So it was like for a while when they were super little. So it was hard to constantly be like the only one to be fulfilling their needs. And she would always say, get up and put him back to bed. He's never going to learn. And I was like, that's too much freaking work, man. Like, that is just way too much work. And I also never wanted him to think that it wasn't okay for him to come and get me if he needed me. Like, that was really the biggest thing. Yes, it was also too tiring for me to constantly be it was just easier to just be like, okay, get in bed, instead of getting up and bringing him back to his bed. But I also didn't feel like I needed to teach him that he couldn't come to me. Obviously, if he's waking in the middle of the night and needs something, I want him to know that I'm there. I don't want him to think that he can't come to me. Like, what? That's the thing. Like, I don't understand why we would be teaching our kids, you're on your own. You're on your own.
Yeah. I heard somebody say one time, like, I don't want my kids to be afraid to tell me that they made a mistake. I want my kids to come to me, to feel like they can come to me when they've made a mistake.
Right.
Because we have this like very authoritarian like type of parenting. I feel like that's the like norm, where you're afraid of your parents and, you have to do good and you get good grades and behave good or you get in trouble. And like, I don't want that relationship with my kids. I don't want that.
Right.
I want to be their safe person. I want when they mess up, I want them to come to me. When they are in trouble, I want them to come to me. If they made bad decisions and drove to a party and got drunk and now can't drive home, I want them to call me and be like, I had too much to drink, even though I wasn't supposed to be drinking, blah, blah, blah. Like, we'll deal with that later. Let me come and get you.
Right. That's not the important part. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It is. And again, I think a lot of this goes back to not really understanding babies, right? We just don't understand how much they are picking up. And like, just like I was talking about that video that I saw, like, why would you ever expect that your baby that's only a few months old can read your face that clearly to know that you are not interacting with them and how traumatic that is for them? Like, that they know if their needs are being met or not, and they will react.
They will. Yeah. And there's the piece of it too. Like we were talking before we hit record, when we should always just hit record. Yeah. Well, we were talking about like, how it became like, we have, people have to go back to work, really early, and people are isolated from extended families and from community and are doing, all of this household life, money earning, surviving stuff completely on their own. And so that in and of itself is kind of not how humans have always lived and is like dysfunctional. That is dysfunctional. But it's also completely normal. That's like our normal society, right? And so we have this idea that if people aren't functioning that way, that there is like something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's become so normal that now we think, oh, if you're just like not making all of this happen, then you're failing and you're not the system's not the problem. You as an individual are the problem. And this is how we get things like cry it out. And, because people are trying to function and people are trying to do all on their own. And then they're like, oh, yeah, no, well, we need everybody to take care of themselves. So, the baby's going to try to take care, the baby has to take care of himself. And, the little kids have to, sit still and be quiet and take care of themselves. And don't come to me with your problems because we don't have time for that. And, just suck it up. I don't have time for you. I don't have time to stop my day and have, this moment of connection to address and deal with your feelings, which is like, I have all day to do that. I don't, I'm in a situation where I can work whenever I need to or I can move that around. My husband makes enough money to pay for most of the stuff and that we need to survive, in capitalism. And and then we have, so if somebody has a breakdown, like we set it up, so that I can be like, all right, let's work through this. But like, if you have two parents who are working, you're sending your kids to school, then you're sending your kids to school to a classroom where there's 30 kids and one teacher. And then you have to, take care of all this stuff on the weekends or whatever. You have kids who are babies and kids who are needing things and emotional things. And it's like, I don't have time for that. I need you all to get your shit together.
Mm-hmm.
And now here we are with like a bunch of adults that have no idea how to like manage feelings and, in a healthy way. And, I'm sitting here as one of them. I'm me. We have me. As somebody who is just like, completely overwhelmed by emotions. I have no idea like how to handle them, self-medicating and, prescription medicating. And, this is how we have it. And thank God I'm not, I don't know, some other person who's emotionally, physically abusive, because of the same reasons.
Oh, man, there's so much, right?
Yeah, there's really a lot to it. So does breastfeeding make your child needy? I mean, that's a loaded question. It's like, is needy a thing? I don't even think needy is a thing. Like, no. Babies have normal biological, physiological needs that we need to respond to. And if we don't, then, they can't develop into these emotionally secure people.
Right.
And breastfeeding is not, breastfeeding gets thrown under the bus so much.
It's like, well,
it's blamed for everything.
It's not fair.
Yeah, it really is. It's like, oh my God, you're still breastfeeding? Oh, they're going to be so needy. Or you're bed sharing? Oh my God, you're never going to get them out of your bed.
Yeah, because my kids are still in my bed, right? They're teenagers.
Yeah, like what teenager wants to sleep in your bed?
Right.
And Jack moved out of the bed again with Jack. Like, I thought he was going to sleep with us forever. Well, Exley came along. Exley likes to wake up really early. Jack was like, I'm out of here. Exley's still in the bed. But also, like, he still needs to be in the bed. He's just in a stage where he is not ready. And like, I'm like, whatever, man. This is like this is you growing in your own way. And when you're ready to sleep in a room by yourself, like as if that's just some small, tiny thing, that you'll do it when you're ready.
Well, it's so messed up because then you see people posting stuff on social media like, oh, my child is going away to school. I would do anything to be able to have those snuggles again. I would do anything. I saw somebody post something the other day. Her kid's like 5, not even that old, right? Like 5.
Yeah.
And she had posted a picture of him when he was like, I don't know, 6, 7 months old. And like, had all these chunky rolls. And, somebody was like, oh my gosh, what a cute squish or whatever. And she was like, yeah, I'd give a pinky toe to snuggle with that baby again. But when it's there, we're like, oh my God, grow up. Stop being so needy.
Right.
But then when they are to that point where they don't need you, like need you, whatever, with quotes, we're like, oh my gosh, where did my baby go? Well, you only have one chance to make this, to do this with them.
Yeah. There's never, ever been a person on their deathbed that was like, oh my God, I snuggled my kids too much. Oh my God, I breastfed them too long. Yeah. Oh, I really nurtured them too much.
Yeah.
Like that is just not a thing that people say looking back, ever.
No. Or do what feels right to you.
So snuggle on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.